Welcome to this episode of the Doug Sandquist Podcast. Where interested is interesting, and interesting people share their stories and build their biographies along the way. I'm your host, Doug Sandquist. I'm a dentist and a photographer, and now a podcast host. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Doug Sandquist, and on Facebook, Doug Sandquist Photo. And you can join our email list by going to DougSandquistPodcast.com. And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast. I guess it's Apple Podcast now. Stitcher. We are on Spotify as well. If those are your preferred methods of listening to a podcast, go ahead and go there and rate and review us, as that helps us out. And today's guest is Dr. Christopher Kanas. Hey, Chris.
What's happening?
Not much. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man. No worries, man. It's a nice day, man. It's a beautiful Sunday.
And as with all of our guests, I don't have a bio, and I haven't read a bio, but I will tell you that I met Chris in dental school. So we've known each other for a while. But I will say that we were not good friends in dental school. We were acquaintances. We were friendly.
We weren't enemies.
Yeah. For sure. But we definitely didn't like hang out all the time either.
We had different crowds for sure.
Yeah. And but I have followed Chris's work through social media over the past 20 something years. And the goal of today's podcast is to discover Chris's real biography. You okay with that?
Yeah, man. I got a few skeletons. We'll see what comes out.
Okay, cool. So to start, I have a list of 10 quick and easy starter questions. There are no maybes here, Chris. Only yes, no, or pick one.
Okay.
Number one, gummy bears or M&Ms?
Oh, gummy bears.
Nice.
Unless they're frozen. I can't put them in if I put them in a yogurt or something or a Cold Stone.
Oh, you don't like them?
Well, they'll just pull out every filling I got, right?
Yeah, like a dentist nightmare.
Yeah.
Sweet or salty?
If I'm going to go to one, I'm going to go to sweet.
Okay, cool. But you'll take salty too. I mean, I've had some people say, I really like the sweet and salty popcorn, or the peanut butter bar, the payday bar.
You got either one of those, and my hand's reaching in both bags, man.
Yeah, that's why I like that. It's either or. Hot or cold?
Cold, which is why I don't know why I'm here in the humid South, man.
Yeah, South Carolina's a little bit hot.
Yeah, just a little.
And okay, number 4. Would you wear flip-flops to Disney World?
Dude, I wear flip-flops to church. So Disneyland, no. Okay, so the caveat on that is, would I? Yeah, of course, but I don't. If I knew how much I had to hike around, probably not.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Yeah, because it's the rule in my family that if you're gonna go to Disney World with me and you happen to choose shoes that may not make it for like 12 hours, there is no complaining, and there are no new shoes. That's my rule.
Yeah, I did this in Europe for a little bit. I mean, when I first went to Europe, because when you first go, you don't know how long you're going to be there, right? Or you know how long you're going to be there, but you don't know how much walking you're going to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so
it's a lot.
There, and I didn't have necessarily flip-flops, but they weren't much a grade higher than that, right? They were kind of more like a
sandal,
just kind of a flat sandal, right? And let's just say by day 3, I was looking for shoes in England.
Yeah, you're like, I'll pay double for shoes,
Right. Quite literally, yeah.
Yeah. Are you an early riser or a night owl?
Oh, early riser. Yeah. I mean, I would love to be able to stay up, but no, it's not even possible for me.
Yeah. Like 5 o'clock, I'm usually I'm rousing myself. So that's even on a day I can sleep in. Number 6, cow or chicken?
Cow.
Number 7, short hair or long hair?
Dude, I'll take any hair now.
I hear that a lot.
I mean, I don't have any option but short hair because a balding dude with long hair is
It looks a little
like
bit
a Walmart, my friend. So yeah,
nice. I like that. Let's go with short.
Yeah.
Tattoos, yay or nay?
4.
All right.
So it's a yay. Would I do them again? I don't know. I don't have regret, and I don't have any desire for anymore. So I don't even really think about it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Cool. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
And the bonus question, number 11, sauerkraut, love it or hate it?
Oh, love it. Oh,
cool.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
good.
I mean, I am German, so I have to have it.
All right. All right, cool. All right, cool, Chris. So that wasn't that bad so far, right?
Hey, how's the audio coming back? I have my neighbors cutting the grass back here.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
okay. All right.
I can't hear him. Yeah, it's fine.
Perfect.
So what's your earliest childhood memory?
I think, okay, so actual vivid memory would be up in Maine, up on the, Maine gets some weird Indian name rivers. So my family went camping as a kid, canoe camping. So you put all the stuff in the canoe and you go up I want to say it's something Scott, Prescott or something river up there. And anyway, I was cutting wood and the axe kind of shimmied off the log and went right into my knee when we were out there of BFE. And so I mean my dad had a first aid kit and he did his best to kind of sew it up, but it's still a pretty big scar. So but that was kind of like the first big memory, right? So
yeah, what happened with that? Did you end up like going to the hospital, or did they just patch it up in the woods and you just go on? Or
kind of like I'm kind of a little bit of a Frankenstein from my dad, right? Because I would just I don't know if my dad just didn't want to pay the money to go to an emergency room or anything, but anytime I got a big cut like my knee and then I cut my forehead open running into a trailer, and both times I ended up being on the on the ground or on the on the table with him leaning over me throwing stitches through me, and so and he what, after all these years he wasn't that great. A few scars, man. I think it could have been healed up a lot better.
Yeah.
I don't know. When it's your kid, it's let's experiment a little bit, right?
Right. Yeah.
I still have fillings in my head that he did, though. I'm not sure. I'm like, did I really have a cavity on that too?
Yeah. Yeah. So your dad was a dentist?
Oh, yeah, I used general dentist. Yeah.
All right. Cool. So I'm sure he thought he could do it on you, take care of you. It's like, you don't need to go anywhere else. I'll take care of you.
Oh, that was kind of it, man.
So what were your summers like as a kid?
Okay, so summers was a lot of. We lived in a neighborhood and with a big neighborhood pool, and so in Auburn, California, and when you can't drive yet, and the cool thing about the early '80s was the Walkman just came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so before you were kind of limited to your music choices of either being in the car or
at home, a record player.
And so 1979 or 1980, 81, somewhere in there was kind of my dawn of adolescence or whatever. And so that's when rock and roll got discovered. And so the summers were a lot of kind of kicking back at the pool with the Walkman on, and just watching the neighborhood girls swim.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got dirt bikes. And so I ended up doing a lot of dirt biking, later. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I remember my first, I remember a buddy of mine got the first Walkman ever, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I'm like, you know?
Yeah, I was actually on eBay the other day because I was like, okay, I want to see if I can find the first Walkman I had, just to have it for nostalgia reasons, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so, and because I've never seen anyone like this before, ever since, and I've been wanting one because, so I had the first one I had was like a little blue Sony, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but it had individual volumes for each ear, and so. So, you could have one ear at 10, which, most of the time I had both ears at 10. But in case you had to be part of a conversation in the car or whatever, you could roll one down a little bit,
Right.
So, but I've never been able to find it ever since. And I've been looking for them on eBay. And so, yeah, I don't know.
There's got to be one that pops up at some time.
I mean, it's Sony. It's not like it's it's not
back then, Sony was it was a Sony Walkman. That was the only, like, they had the patent. They were like that's the only one you could buy, like, when they first came out. Like, there wasn't like other options. They were the first to miniaturize that I think, right?
I would think so, but that was really kind of my gateway to the devil right there. I mean, before then I was listening to my parents' mellow, 70s, light rock, Carpenters and, ABBA and stuff like that. And
so what you said was gateway to the devil. So what did you get into way back then? What was your first love?
It was a pretty big one, so I'm sure if my mother would have known what was on my headphones at that time, with the Highway to Hell going on and, Hell's Bells, I probably would have got beaten to, probably over the border into Nevada,
Yeah, got shipped across the way, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think Back in Black was my first cassette, right, that I bought. And I remember hiding that, I had to hide that one. And then my parents, my dad didn't care so much, but my mom, my dad was probably like, yeah, he's gonna listen to music of his age. But my mom, it had to be, like really mellow. And so, and Christian too. But the Amy Grant just wasn't cutting it at that point.
Amy Grant. So what, Sandy Patty has another one, way back then.
As my brother would say, Dirty Burger. Yeah. So, no. I'm pretty sure AC/DC Back in Black was the first one, though. And then
that's cool. Then it went on from there.
So,
so what was your first job? Did you have a job as a kid?
Yeah, no, I listened to. Paper Route. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Back when paper, they were actually paper boys, right? They weren't. Now everybody drives around a car. Adults kind of driving around a car.
Yeah.
Back then, you put on the big old. The schmuck, right? And you had all the papers lined up in your belly like you were pregnant. Yeah. And you go around on your bike and,
Yeah, you had there was the kids that they wore it around their waist, and then other kids who actually fashioned it on their handlebars, so they'd actually have the bags like on their handlebars, like.
Oh, yeah.
And they could huck them from the street. If they got good, they could just put them at the doorstep.
Yeah, and I didn't realize what kind of slave masters we really were, because then we had to go collect the money, right? Because first you had to deliver the paper, then you had to go actually collect for the paper company, right?
Really? That's wild.
Yeah, so at that point, I didn't really know, but I knew who tipped me because they would get their paper right at the sliding glass, right entrance, because I delivered to a mobile park, so it was all kind of old retired people. But
wow, I didn't know you had to go collect the money too. That's pretty wild.
Oh yeah, man, I had to go around and you give them a ticket, a receipt, and all this kind of stuff, and so
it's probably a decent learning experience, though. It's probably just learn how like commerce works at some level.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember I think it was like $4 a month or something. Nothing that was too expensive at that point. But but I remember, it was $4 because they would give me $5, right? And they would just say that, that's how I would get tipped, right? They would just give me a $5 bill, and that would be my tip for the month. So, but not all of them did, some older people are kind of funny sometimes, but those were the ones that had to walk out a little bit to get their paper. You gave me the $1, boom, that's going right. You don't even have to, on a rainy day, you're not even having to step out.
That's cool. So was when you were growing up, was like going to college since your dad was a dentist, was that kind of like going to college, was that kind of a thing, or was that like Was it an option for you, or did you know you were going to go? Was that always a thing in high school, or is it just kind of like
I
something to do?
didn't. Well, when I was in high school, I mean, and kind of thinking what you were going to do. I mean, I, I always liked art, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
never really a great artist, but I liked it. And so,
What types of art did you like?
I was a big mad guy. I loved cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in fact, the comic strip guy, Johnson, Don Johnson, not the Miami Vice guy, but the
Mm-hmm.
artist for Mad Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
He was my favorite, and so I'd emulate his drawings all the time. And then of course, Far Side, and I wasn't huge into most comics, but they're the ones that I really liked a lot. And so it was all comic art, and so I do a lot of that. And then when I just went to community college because I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. So American River College in Sacramento. I went there for a couple of years, and kind of floated the idea of graphic design and whatnot, and something where I could do art for a living and not just be having creative personal art. But that's when I realized that it was, there's art as a creative, and you probably understand this as photography. There's a photography that you can go out and you can set up your own shot, and you can look at with your own eye and everything. And then there's professional photography where people may want an angle or something that you're like kind of scratch your head going, well, that may not be the best angle for that shot, but that's what they want, right? And they're
It's a different vision than your, and so it's the difference between the artist and what the customer wants.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that was my kind of wake up to that. Maybe graphic design wasn't kind of what I was looking for, because I enjoyed art from my perspective, but taking a customer's request and doing in that regard, that's a whole other talent, I think, to be able to be creative that way.
Well, that sounds like that's work to me. That doesn't feel like art to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of what I'm going through with my daughter Zoe right now. I mean, she loves to write. I'm like, okay, well, and she wants to do journalism. As far as means, I'm like, well, realize there's freelance journalism where you can write what you want, and then there's journalism where you are going to write to an
audience
bias, of whatever the publication is wanting, and so she'll get a little bit of that though,
that's an interesting way that you thought about that as a youngster, because I don't think lots of people would think about it that way. I mean, I've learned early on in my photography career. I've done 4 weddings or 5 weddings, and I am not a wedding photographer, and it's just not my thing. I mean, I enjoy making the pictures, but I like making the pictures as I see them, not as the person wants them. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. And this is the idea. I mean, that's why I don't know if. I mean, there's artists, and there's wonderful artists, and then there's ones that can do it for a living and be professional, and they're in the lanes going the same direction, but they're in different lanes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a far. I mean, if I was commissioned to do a work and they paid me the money and they got the commission of what I gave them, and they were okay with that, whatever I gave them, then that was fine. But if they say that's not what we're looking for, then here's your money back. I mean, that's kind of how. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's like, I create a photo or I create an image, and this is my art. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah,
it's a hard way to make a living, at least in my world. But I mean,
but you're true to yourself. What your vision is, and you can kind of create what it is in your mind, and not have any hindrances. And so.
So how did you end up deciding that you're going to go be a dentist after that? Because that's a little bit of a departure from graphic design to being a dentist.
Well, there was a few steps in between there. I did the holy college plan, meaning I did 7 years. And so
wow,
the perfect number, right? So I went from there to English, and because I don't know. I mean, I guess Zoe, my daughter, gets kind of her writing interest from me too. I mean, I do like to write, but again, nothing that would ever be professional. But I thought I'd do English and become an English teacher, and do education that way. And then, so I kind of did a double major. As far as I want to do English, and I always like sciences too. I like biology. And so I kind of did English biology, both together along with secondary education. Cause high school was kind of what I was aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
And
high school teacher sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's part of me that still really does enjoy teaching actually. But I remember I know we went to the same school. Do you remember Daniel Alves?
I do remember that name. Yeah, I do. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. So, he and I had a conversation in Granger, right? The dorm were you in Granger or were you in
I was in Granger. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're in Granger. So I remember exactly. I mean, it was a conversation right by the front desk, when you're walking in, and we were just kind of casually talking. And Daniel was kind of like you. I mean, I knew who he was, but it wasn't like close contact,
Mm-hmm.
But just some of the I got along with, and we ran around in different circles. But anyway, it was just a conversation we had, and we were just kind of talking about the future a little bit. I was talking about education. And I don't know if he had teachers in his family, or I can't recall, how he did. He's all, have you ever done the numbers? Have you ever crunched the numbers on teaching? And I'm like, no. He's all, do you know how much they make a year? I'm like, 50, 40, 50. And he's all, have you ever divided that up by 12? And then have you ever looked at and seen how much, a house mortgage would be and all that? And so I started running the numbers on that. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. You're right. He's all, you going to have a family? I'm like, yeah, I want to have a family. I want to be a dad. He's all, so now you got family costs on top of that, and you got insurance and all this kind of stuff. And he's all, I mean, teachers are awesome, but you're never really going to get far ahead as far as, being able to do a lot, because you're monetarily going to be kind of strapped.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So then I started thinking, and I wouldn't say I'm a huge money guy. I never really had the desire to be super wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need the top line of everything, but I do like to travel, and that's my thing. And travel would probably be the, that would be the one thing that if I couldn't travel, that would be really kind of a depressing thing for me. And so, and unfortunately, traveling,
it's a little harder right now. Yeah. It takes money, and it's really hard right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So things are getting done around the house right now because I got no other.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting about the teacher's career, the teachers that I know, is that time. They get time often.
Yeah, correct.
But they give up income, and their income is capped at what somebody will pay them. Is the way I see that. So I mean, I think So how do you think that? So you picked that after that. So what happened with that then? So then you had this conversation. Then you're like, I'm going to go do X.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, as a Christian, I wouldn't say that. If you paired me up to like what you think the ideal Christian is, I'd fall way short of that mark, right? As far as what I think about myself. But I did at this point. I did say a prayer, and at this point in college, I remember I was kind of in the men's restroom, right? In the shower, and I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, okay, God, I think that you've given me a talent for teaching, and it's something I enjoy to do. I enjoy working with youth, and I always have. Youth, just especially teenagers, I've always had a kind of a soft spot, just a real working ability with. I'm like, well, or if this is not the means, then kind of show me a different path, and that week, I ended up having a conversation with my dad, and he's all, I was starting to get, I was my junior year, right? And so I was starting to like, okay, well, this is got to be, I got to start thinking now. I mean, is this what I'm going to do, or am I going to continue on?
There's a point when you have to like make a decision.
Yeah. So I'm like, and I was still feeling a little restless about, the whole teaching thing. And my dad, he's like, well, I mean, he's all, you enjoy art. He's all, and if you want to continue on, dentistry has been a great field for me. I enjoy being a dentist. He's all, I don't enjoy running a practice, but I do enjoy being a dentist. And he's all, and then from there, you can always go into, pediatrics or orthodontics or if you want to kind of work in the same age group, and I'm like, that's really interesting. So I ended up taking just one test. I signed up for the DAT, of course, and then I just applied to Loma Linda, and that was it. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be the answer. If God, if you want me to continue on with my education, then I'll get into Loma Linda. And if not, and it wasn't like I was like a 4.0 student. I was coasting around with 3.0. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't. It depends what your competition is. 3.0 is not exactly great for graduate school, but I knew I had a few coattails being on, my dad graduating from there, being alumni, and also going to PUC. But it wasn't, my GPA wasn't huge. So anyway, I got in, and I remember the teacher. I remember that interview though, and the examiner, I can't remember who it was for Loma Linda, came in and he's all, so tell me something that the world at large believes in, but you don't. And
I don't. That's amazing. You remember that interview, because I remember I had that interview and I don't remember that interview at all. So I'm fascinated to hear the story.
Well, I just remember because I was like, that's an interesting question. I mean, and so. I was like, that's a deep question. That's a little more of in depth and gave some thoughts. So anyway, I responded with, and this is always to this day kind of still trips me out a little bit. And it did as I was going through biology in my major, and most of the world accepts as you get further into science, it seems like God becomes more of an abstract rather than a concrete, right?
Right.
For me, it was completely the opposite. I mean, God was more of an abstract, and as I got more and more into science, I actually started discovering that God actually made a lot more sense, because some of these things that were, as you get into the deeper sciences, the genetics and how everything's knitted together, and embryology and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, this just doesn't happen. I can't accept that this all just evolved into this, and you start getting into what came first, and you look at protein synthesis and all this. I'm like, this has to be intelligent design, it wasn't an argument yet for the Christian God, but it was an argument for intelligent design at that point.
Right.
And so I was telling them, I'm like, look, man, the farther I get into this, I mean, I know the world believes in evolution, but I can't buy it. I mean, in microevolution, yes. I mean, I can understand, obviously the breeding of animals, by man has proved that you can make a dog a different dog, right? Or a horse a different horse, but you can't make a one cell enzyme, into to something completely different. And I remember him writing down, like he really thought that answer was pretty good, and pretty thought out. Now, I don't know if, and it wasn't really an intentional answer to impress a religious institution. It was actually a question and kind of a following that I always had. And so I think that might have been the seal of the deal.
That's cool. So of course the follow-up, not to go down a deep rabbit hole, but is your belief as strong in that regard today as it was then, or is it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think now, and especially 20 years later, now we're seeing, even more than we did back then. We're starting to see evolution have holes in it, as far as, okay, now that we know more science than we did when we first postulated this idea. now we're running, now you're seeing secular people going, okay, no, we got a hole there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been an interesting find, you know? And again, you know, when you bring up intelligent design, you know, and the term God and whatnot, you know, everybody is going to be biased toward whatever the God they believe in. But I certainly believe in intelligent design, you know, at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Which is pretty cool. I mean, yeah, my uncle is a physicist, or retired physicist, and he used to go on these expeditions to actually, you know, archaeological finds and do carbon dating and all of this stuff, and study the age of the earth. And he would go with religious institutions trying to, like, you know, guarantee there was a 6,000 year time frame. And he's like, you know, like, there's no science that actually proves that.
Well, so
he's like, there's science that proves that that there's, you know, carbon dating data that's older than 6,000 years.
Yeah.
And so one thing that he always would say, because he actually did research at Stanford with, you know, a bunch of atheists up there and stuff. And so he'd always talk to them. He always had a decent relationship with them. And he would always talk to them. And he's like, look, he's like, here's what I know. This is what I know. I don't know how he did it or heard it. I don't know how she did it, how it did it. But God did it. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
So at the end, he's like, I don't know if it's 1,000,000 years old. I don't know if it's 500,000 years old. I don't know. He's like,
well, you know,
God did it.
The biblical account, right? It just says the earth was void. It didn't say that it didn't exist, right?
Right.
So it could have been a hurling piece of space rock, right? Mm-hmm. For
forever.
Millions of years. Yeah, you know. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it was just a creation out of something that was void. It wasn't like a brand new, boop, there's a planet, right? You know, so.
Yeah, and of course, the religions don't do themselves any service by just, you know, pigeonholing everybody into this belief system and not believing that, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, like I've been out to Arizona, and there's this place in the Vermilion Cliffs where there's a few really, really cool, distinct dinosaur tracks that are in the sandstone that are like, that is really cool, and that is a specific dinosaur track. I mean, it's when you see it, it's like, that's a track. And it's like, there's nowhere in the biblical story of like dinosaurs. And so, I mean, you know, I'm going to give some leeway to say, you know, the dinosaurs lived on the earth. I mean, I'm not sure when, yeah, but sure. They were here.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You know? Well, I mean, and certainly the skeletons they dug up, you know, you can't, I mean, they're there, right? You know, so
yeah,
well, you just say they're not there.
I know. You know? It's like how do you square that one? You know, it's like
ecology conspiracy. You know, we just happen to plant all these things underground just so you would dig them up. You know, yeah. So you know, so yeah. I mean, there's a lot of questions you can't answer, but you know, yeah. You know, for me, it's getting into the molecular sciences that really kind of proved to me like, no, that's just not happening, you know. And so that's cool. Anyway, you know,
so you applied to dental school, and then you got there, and then, I mean, I don't even think I knew you were applying to dental school until like I looked over in the first day of class, and I look over and I'm like, there's Chris. I'm like, I didn't even know he was coming to dental school, you know. So
yeah, it was pretty wild. I mean,
But I was a different animal. I was a different kid though, because I was not there with any of my friends. I actually got in a year early, so I was there. I jumped the shark a little bit, you know. So
it was pretty interesting. I mean, I remember getting there, and I don't know if you remember Arlie Coltman.
Yeah, I do. You know,
yeah, and he and I were actually going to become dorm mates at Loma Linda, because he was going to go dentistry, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were going to go in as the same class. Then, of course, the unfortunate accident, he was killed. And so that was my first guy that I had actually really had conversations with on a, you know, on my age level. You know, I'd had, you know, family members or whatnot pass away, but not somebody my own age. And especially somebody my own age that we had made definite plans of doing, and we both applied, and we both gotten into Loma Linda, and then then
Was he actually in our class? Was he in your class? Was he in our? He was like, oh wow.
Yeah, he was, and so we'd already kind of talked it out, like, hey, Len, and again, I didn't grow up in the same high school he was at, but just being the nature of PUC, and I wasn't necessarily in his close knit circle, but I was close enough to where, like, hey, we knew we'd be good roommates together, and so yeah, so that's how that transpired, and then unfortunately he was killed on the motorcycle, and that was my first, like, that was a hard day for me. When I remember that day pretty distinctly of waking up at PUC, and a lot of people upset and emotional, and then myself getting that way when I found out the news, and then you had the open casket down there at the University Church, or the main sanctuary at PUC, and I'd never really looked on somebody in the face of somebody that had really kind of passed before, and so and to this day I don't see, I've only seen a couple others. Most people I know now are cremated. But I've looked now into a couple caskets of people that are young, right? That was my first one, and that was a very, you don't go in and come out of that service the same person. It's like, that's okay. Life can be exhausted,
Yeah. And it can go in a flash. I mean, he was just going home. He was, I think I didn't know him well. I mean, I knew him. I didn't know him well. I mean, I saw him that night, I think, before he left. I think I saw him leaving the dorm. Yeah.
He was talking, I was walking up from the CAF, and he was on the motorcycle. The motorcycle, he ended up losing his life on. And he was talking to his girlfriend, Missy Benson, at the time. And, I was just coming up to the dorm from the CAF, and just kind of, I knew he was talking with his girlfriend, so I didn't really stop and chat to him. I just kind of waved hi to him. And then, and then the next morning, the news was out, and it's pretty, that was so, to make, kind of wrap up that part of the story. I mean, I went down to Loma Linda with a completely different idea of what I was going to be and where I was going to be than
you thought.
Yeah. So ended up renting a room. There was all around Loma Linda, there was guys that had or people that had houses that would have a room for rent, and so I didn't know anybody, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to rent a room, and it was pretty cool. It was just month to month or whatnot, and so I ended up being there about 3 months, and then I met Amy. I didn't know Amy Colkman was down there, which was Harley's sister. And then, of course, we had that bond with Arlie, her, being his sister, Amy, and then me kind of, having plans to be his roommate. So we ended up kind of getting another house. And then my wife to be, Tammy, ended up, we needed another roommate. And so do you remember Wally Hayasaka?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Wally was going to be our third roommate. And but the guy never returned a phone call. And so Tammy, my wife right now, I mean, I was walking into class and she was walking out, and she was saying that she was getting, she couldn't handle her roommate anymore, and she was looking for a place, And so I'm like, well, we were supposed to have this guy that's going to be our roommate, but, he's just not returning our phone call. So I don't think he's that interested. So you want to come by and check it out? And so she did, and she moved in, and all of a sudden it was a Three's Company situation, right? Jack.
You were you're Jack Ripper.
Yeah. And so that was it, man. And it was platonic for a while, and then I was dating somebody else, and Tammy, my wife, was dating another person too, and then we kind of broke up at the same time, and then things just progressed from one to the other, and that was it.
Wow, that's cool. That's kind of a weird, that's an interesting story of how that all got together. And now you've been married for 20 something years now.
I'm going on 23. I'll be 23 here in June. Yeah.
Wow.
So 2 kids later, man.
That's cool. So you got you got into dental school, and obviously, and then how did you decide? Were you always going to go to go to a specialty? Was that always going to be your plan, or how did that transpire? Because by the way, he's a kid's dentist, so he treats anyone under the age of 18 or so.
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
13.
I mean, I would say that I was, when you first get in, I was like, oh crap, man, I'm in graduate school now. I got to really, 3.0 ain't gonna cut it no more, man.
No, right. Yeah.
And so, this is serious stuff. I can't just blow off classes anymore. I gotta pick up my game. This can be my career. So
you got to go. Yeah.
I ended up getting pretty. I mean, I can be pretty studious when I want to be, right? And so, and especially when it's a subject that I'm interested in,
right?
But, so I did pick up my game quite a bit at Loma Linda and ended up doing pretty well to the point where, a specialty was an option. And then, my dad just reminded me, he's all, look, man, you still might want to go. He's all pediatrics. He's all, let me just tell you, there's enough general dentists out. The world doesn't need another general dentist. Sacramento doesn't need another general dentist right now. He's all, if you really want to kind of get a little bit ahead, quicker, I would just suggest going pediatrics. It's not, there's not a lot of them out there, and, we're all referring because we don't want to see these guys. And so, he's all, and you like kids, and so I'm like, okay, let's do it, and so, cause I was kind of flipping between endo and pedo at that point. And, cause I did like endo. I kind of like the whole kind of getting in there really like, like a little burrowing, chipmunk, kind of getting in there and getting all the granular stuff out. So I enjoyed that nerdy side of it, but and I ended up having to pick one. So I picked pedo because I was like, yeah, that probably is a better fit overall. And, I told my dad a couple of years ago, I'm like, man, dude, that was the smartest advice you've ever given me, because I've never in one day regretted my career, as a pediatric guy. There's days you walk out and like, okay, I'm going to just skip the glass. I'm just going for the whole bottle of wine right now, Yeah. But for the most part, I mean, everybody's going to have that day, but for the most part, his career, yeah, no, I dig it. It's been a great career.
That's cool. I mean, the joke most GPs will have against the kids dentist is that, our work has to last and yours doesn't, so. And
you are 100% correct. And let me tell you, that adds to part of the stress-free, that filling's got a little margin. A couple of years, it's going to be gone.
It's going to be fine. Yeah. It's got to survive another 3 years and you'll be good, Yeah,
in fact, I only like to see them under 12 now because, I get a little freaked out when I got to do permanent teeth now. I mean, I'm used to working on 6-year molars because, that's kind of the gig. They come in so early. But,
So you send them off at 12, you get them off to the GPs if you can.
Well, I do now. When I was in my California practice, I couldn't because, they had going up to 18 and they didn't really have an in-house adult option, but now here in Carolina, I go to 12 and then once they start getting the premolars in, and I'm like, you're going to head over to the other side, or I even really don't like, if I get 7 through 10 that are kind of all interproximals, and I'm like, I'm sending you on over, I don't want to deal with permanent incisors and interproximal restorations and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
And, they'll look at me with that, like, oh, you're going to send them over. No, we're going to send them back to you.
Yeah.
So getting that married around a little bit. So,
well, that's cool. I mean, it sounds like it worked out well for you because I didn't even know I didn't even know you're going to be a, I didn't even know you're going to be a kids dentist, until you went to pedo school. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, it was great. And, like I said, I never regret it. It's been a great career. I mean, my dad, like I said, was a general dentist. Then he got burned out. He got burned out of running the practice. So he was trying to escape, maybe not doing dentistry, but he was trying to escape
owning.
Yeah. And so, so he. So
you really didn't have a place to land if you were a GP anyways, because he really didn't want to do that anyways. So.
No, he sold. I've learned more what not to do from my dad than actually than what to do. in a lot of ways, which is unfortunate, but that's the way this life story rolled out. But yeah, I mean, he was a great dentist and very personable, but a horrible practice owner, and there's a whole other skill set for being a business owner, and some people can do it, some people can't. And he was one person that probably should have done what I'm doing now. I never owned my own practice because I didn't want to. I did fine monetarily just working, and taking a cut and not dealing with the stress. And so,
right.
And I think I really feel for the guys that are in practice right now, that are getting or just getting out of school and they want to open their own solo practice. Because I think brick and mortar days are largely over. I think our class, our generation might have been, really kind of the last generation kind of get out and be able to establish a solo one unit practice and do okay in, because now the way that all the DSOs and corporate dentistry is coming in, that is a Goliath fight, to kind of get yourself in, unless you really bring something to the table that your corporate dentists aren't bringing, And so we were taught this in dental school,
no, it's like I said in an earlier podcast. I mean, most of us who are dentists, we go to dental school to be business owners, and yet we're not. No one teaches us how to become business owners.
No, yeah. So yeah, either and especially if you're kind of like my type, where that's not your strong suit. People getting out. I mean, it's going to be very tough to kind of get out and practice if you want to open up your own shop. Now corporate dentistry is alive and well, and I mean, you can certainly land there, but those are getting that's not a great place to be either.
No, I think the corporate world is going to have they're going to be in trouble. I think they're going to have troubles coming out of this as well. That's just my own personal take. If you're a corporate entity, and I mean, I could be completely wrong, but if you're a corporate entity expecting to take 10% off the top of a dental practice, and your dental practice has just lost 10% of that, it just lost that 10% due to whatever. I mean, it's no longer the investment that it used to be. Is the point that I would make. Yeah,
no, it's I mean, this whole just this year alone, everything got up. The apple cart got upended, right? So it's a brand new world. I've already talked to one doctor out here. He's all like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to retire. I'm close enough. And with all the new regulations and all this, I'm just done.
I think that's going to be a norm. I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up. I mean, I think, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I think,
So in that regard, I think you do have a great point. That opens up a lot of established practices for people,
right.
Coming out of practice.
For sure.
And there is going to be even. I mean, Joelle, she was a grade ahead of us, right? She's a pediatric dentist up in Sacramento area, and I know that she's been kind of close. And then California, being in California, she's she has to really she had to invest a lot of capital in her existing practice that she just built. She just built a brand new practice. Now she's having to retrofit it and everything with all the air vacs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen is I think you're going to see, the younger people look for more established practices just to start to, work. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there's going to be opportunities like anything else. There's opportunities for all sorts of things to happen. And I think, we can't get ourselves too doom and gloom because there's going to be, there's good opportunity,
I'm just glad to have a career, right? That no matter what, I mean, yes, we got shut down for a couple months, but that was a couple months of us having to get caught up on PPE equipment and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And, I don't think, unless something deadlier comes out, I don't think if this spikes up again in the fall, I don't think dental offices are closing again. I think they're.
I don't think so either. I don't think so. I think we'll have to. We've trudged through before, and we'll have to trudge through again. I mean, that's just the reality,
Yeah, and
So yeah, I mean,
they caught us by surprise the first time, but I don't think nobody's getting caught surprised the second time.
Yeah, and I think really ultimately I think we would have made it through if the hospitals had not had the PPE. And the reason I say in my little practice that I have, I knew PPE was a problem. I was buying it in February, preparing that it was going to be a problem in March when I couldn't get it.
Yeah,
and so I was buying it up early, and the reason I say that the corporate model is not going to work is because why weren't the hospitals buying this up in January and February when I couldn't get it? I mean, if I couldn't get it, they couldn't get it either. So why weren't they buying up this stuff? Why wasn't the corporate people raising the alarm? Because the corporate bean counters don't really want to, they don't want to waste the money.
Yeah, no, you're right. Those that did, my office out in California was small corporate. It's not big DSO, but he did. I mean, he saw this when it started happening in China. He's like, oh, this is coming here, and so he was one of the fortunate ones that actually did, and he never shut down. Now he pulled off he just had one doctor in the practice just seeing emergency. They weren't seeing elective patients, but they quote didn't officially shut down the doors at any time. I mean, it was open every day for whatever had to be seen at the moment. So
right. Well, that's cool. So yeah, so let's just keep moving along. So you mentioned that you mentioned music and you mentioned writing. Those are your two main hobbies now, and travel? Is that pretty much it, or what else are you doing to keep yourself going?
I mean, well, we just moved here, so I mean, we just got here in January. So I'm picking up my golf game a little bit. Nice. Every state is known for something. Well, South Carolina is known for golf. And so, and I went out with my son just a couple of weeks ago, and let's just say that I live on a golf course now. The backyard just kind of so. I just kind of wait till in fact, just while we've been talking, I had one golf ball come in the yard, and so the guy saw me out there. And so that's another golf ball for me.
You didn't want to come get it.
No, they don't, man. You'll have some that kind of like run up and try to get the ball. And then others like, I'll forget it.
That's
so
cool.
I get a few, every week, I build them up, so. That's
cool. No windows broken yet though, right?
No, but I had one hit the brick. And so I'm like, okay, that would have hit the window. That would have been, that definitely would have been a broken. So I got fortunate that way. I've had a couple in the pool, and so,
that's cool.
That's a water hazard of a different sort, know. So
what would you consider as your greatest success?
Oh boy. I would actually honestly say my career. I generally think, I don't want to be boastful, but sometimes when you're just cut out for something, and it's not being arrogant, it's not being boastful, but you just know you're the right fit for what you need or what the world needs. And being a pediatric dentist has been that, I think, and all blessings to God really, because I don't want to come across like I'm great. This ability was given to me, from God. And I just think it's a talent that I'm returning for his service, right? I'm good at it, and I just have that persona for kids. And so there's nothing that I enjoy more. I mean, if you had to ask what emotion gives you the most pleasure, it's when I see that scared kid come in to the office, and they're very frightened. And you take your time and you're patient with them and you kind of show them and you work their trust up. And by the time they leave that practice or they leave that appointment, they walk out really just smiling and happy and you just know that you've succeeded in not only doing the dentistry, which is kind of secondary, but you succeeded more in their psychology of them overcoming a fear that they had. And so. And
That's cool. you basically changed their dental health for the rest of their life, basically.
Yeah, and so, and that to me is a success, because that carries on. That doesn't mean, that's just not me getting, a reimbursement. That's me actually changing a life, at that point. So that's how I would measure that.
Cool. Any regrets?
Regrets are tough. Certainly, yes. But not in the sense that there's certainly things I would do over, right? If I could. But regrets have a way of making you grow too, as far as, okay, well, I learned from that experience. And so that's not going to be anything that I'm going to do again. And so if it's a true regret, right? So, and, I have a couple of those, of course. And so,
I think the lesson there is just being able to identify that is a regret to not do again. And I think sometimes, it becomes a really regret when you just keep doing it over and over and over again. It's like, why did I keep doing that? I mean, it's like banging your head into the wall, So that hurts.
Yeah, it does, man. And so, and some things have been harder to kick than others, but as long as the path, it may have thorns and it may have thistles in the path, but that will stab you every once in a while. But as long as you kind of continue down that road of growth, sometimes those are needed. Those are actually blessings in disguise, as far as like, okay, that made me a stronger person.
Yeah, I think the question is just how you view them. Do you actually view them as regrets or just bumps in the road? I think the way you mentioned that is an interesting way to look at them. If it stuff happens to all of us, but do we just look how you look at it and how you reflect on it is the important part. Yeah,
it is. I mean, most of my regrets have been things that I've either said or things I haven't said when I needed to say them.
That's a big one. Yeah. Why didn't I speak whatever was on what I needed to say at the time?
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's never as powerful as when you come around to it again.
Well, it's interesting. This church I belong to, they have this men's group, and they say that the number one sin of men, is passivity, which at first I was like, really, passivity? But they're actually kind of on to something there. I mean,
I'm not sure I would call it. I'm not sure I would say. I think sin is a little bit of a strong word, but I understand what they're saying in that context. But I don't disagree with that, though. I think passivity is definitely a cultural issue that we are facing. Passive men is not helpful in society. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, and so and that was kind of and I never really, I knew that I wanted to leave California for a lot of different reasons, but I didn't know that personal spiritual growth here in Carolina would be an unexpected blessing, I suppose. And joining this one church, it's really kind of, I think because I was kind of that guy that would be I could be a little bit cavalier, a little bit passive on some things.
Let it go. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And so kind of joining this group, I've already made decisions. I'm like, before I would have kind of just passed it off or whatever. And now I'm like, no, actually we're going to deal with this, and that type of thing. So
it is amazing. When I've noticed that in my own family, I'm a pretty passive guy myself, and learning to step out of that and just learn how to make a decision. It is amazing how much better the family just responds to that. I mean, how leadership actually matters.
It does. It actually,
and it's shocking to say. It's shocking to hear myself say that, but I mean, it's kind of true. I mean, it's such a simple concept, but it
is. It's when you think about men or other figures in your life that have actually changed direction for you, have been people that have made you pause and maybe redirect. They've never been passive people. They've
Mm-mm.
always been people that are like, no, they're the ones that take you aside and say, hey, look, don't, you need to, you're going down this road right here,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to make a change, or you need to really think about what you're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
people that actually get in your face a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
it's
people
not,
who are willing to just put the line in the sand and say, look, this is the line in the sand. This is what
yeah,
I'm going to put up with, and this is not. I mean, and pick one. It's fine. I don't care. Pick one.
yeah. And it's interesting because we look back on those and go, I never really look at anybody that's actually been, gotten into my face before and maybe changed things. I never look at them back and go, oh, that guy was an a-hole. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I actually remember that guy. That guy was actually really right on the money,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, it's interesting when you jump into that as your family, when you actually start to lean into like, okay, we can make it. I'm going to make a decision, and we're going to deal with it. And it's amazing when it usually just works. I mean,
yeah, it really does. Yeah, and it's funny raising kids. Sometimes there was a tendency to kind of like, well, I don't want to push on them too hard,
Mm-hmm.
and not and kind of damage a relationship there. But I think there's a lot of unspokenness in youth where they claim they want to have freedom, but they actually want more direction
Mm-hmm.
than they will allow themselves to express, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you think back to when you were, I mean, I think we did too. We wanted freedom, but we really didn't know where to go.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, I mean, it's a fine line. I mean, my kids are, 11 and 15, and learning how to guide them rather than, and almost lead them, to their path rather than, just be a passive friend. I mean, I don't think that's helpful to anybody.
no, I agree. And that's really, if I could say my difference between California and Carolina here just in the last few months, that's really kind of, kind of been the thing I wasn't expecting that has happened is joining a group in a church that kind of challenges you as a man to step up, and it's not okay to just kind of sit on the sidelines. You need to be active,
Mm-hmm.
And so, like in the grand scheme of things, I mean, in my spiritual faith, I just kind of, like I said, I'm not a great Christian when it comes to like the quote Christian look,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's things that I've just, I just asked God to kind of direct
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just in ways let him direct and
Right.
kind of pick up on the clues when he is directing. And this
Yeah.
is kind of one of those things that I'm like, wow, okay, this is actually probably a good move,
Yeah.
for what I needed at this point, having teenagers.
Yeah.
You
That's good.
So, yeah. So kind of
That's
weird.
what,
And I enjoy the job too. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I enjoy my position at where I'm at, I could have been in
good.
California too, but,
That's good.
I was getting a little burned out in Cal, and you
Yeah.
never know, right? Because now who knows what California is going to turn into.
I know. Right. Yeah, that had to be. I mean, moving across the country in the middle of your career had to be an interesting. That's a different. That doesn't. Dentists don't move a lot. I mean, historically, they don't move practices a lot. It's a difficult, or it's a scary thing for dentists. So how's that been? How's that been relocating?
I would say that it's been challenged more than I expected, professionally wise. And it doesn't. I mean, kids are kids, and dentistry's dentistry. That's not the challenge. I mean, the challenge for me has been being in a well-oiled machine where we had privileges and rights and anesthesiologists coming into the office and able to kind of when that patient comes in, kind of know where they're going to go, right? Are we going to see the child in the chair, or is this going to be IV sedation, or is this going to be oral sed, or is this going to be hospital, and based on their age, weight, and health conditions. And so when I came on board out here, one thing I think in my own ignorance or my own naivety of being raised in California is your pool of being able to get different resources is a lot greater because, well, California is a richer state. So, so you have a lot of more people that are wanting to settle in California because of the income. A lot of people say California is an expensive state, and it is, but it's also a state where you make a lot more money. And so, so a lot of people go out there, and when you come to a poor state like Carolina, you know, you get into a situation where that resource pool isn't as high, and there's the challenges of that there being somebody in that pool is a lot lower too. So right now, I wasn't necessarily expecting that challenge. You know, I'm trying to right now, you know, I've been here since January, and we're just getting an anesthesiologist to be able to come in the office and do IV sedation on the patients. And he charges like $3,000 a day, right? You know? And so, but he brings in his own, he brings in his own assistant to help him kind of do the turnaround. So it can be done. It just is, you know, I mean, you're gonna have to really kind of book the cases. I mean, and be selective.
Right.
But yeah, for the owner of the practice to cover my costs and the anesthesia costs, you know, I'm gonna have to be bringing in, you know, $10,000 a day probably, which again can be done. It's just gonna be. You
got to do it.
You're gonna have to work it. You know?
It's interesting how the economics just are different from state to state. I mean, it's like it's just an interesting, and it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily. In the end, it's, you know, the net, it's all the same, but it's just different. You know, it's just a way it just works differently.
Yeah. And you know, and the other challenge was, you know, in California, there was enough hospitals in the Sacramento area to have a day a week in the hospital for the kids that, you know, that were a little bit more medically challenged or whatnot, or really low weight. And here, you know, you're getting one day a month. And so it's a little bit more challenging that way. Things I didn't expect, you know? Yeah. And so, so that's been a challenge. But it's been a good challenge because, I mean, they kind of brought me in as kind of a partial owner, right? They gave me a cut of the, I didn't even have to purchase in. They just gave me a cut of the company and just said, hey, look, you know, you're going to be able to run this however you want to do it. But, you know, we're counting on you to be the guy that's going to do it. You know, you're going to establish all this. So it's a challenge, but it's a good challenge, you know, and then it's, you know, you're picking up the phone a lot more, you know.
That's cool. I know. Hey, you're a little bit of an owner. What's your greatest fear?
Probably seeing my child walk away from God. You know, if they make the decision not to follow God, that would probably be I would feel like a failure, one. And then, of course, I would, you know, since I believe in a life after this one, to not have them there in the next life would be heartbreaking. So, you know, other than that, you know, I don't really have, I mean, even if I went now, I mean, if I got cancer now and, you know, in mid-50s were my time, then I'm okay. I'm okay with that, you know. But now my fears are more on my kids. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's just interesting that you would think that they would walk away, but I guess it's always, you never know, because they're their own human beings, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to be on this side of the equation, because I certainly wasn't a you know, like I said, even growing up, I wasn't necessarily a huge by the book Christian, but you know, this generation is a little different in the sense that even when I was the prodigal, right? You know, I knew I was the prodigal, right? I knew that there was things I was taking in life, you know, that weren't on the path of the straight and narrow, but I knew I was in the wrong. This generation is a little different, because now the challenges they're up against aren't things that are considered wrong socially, right? You know, we didn't have screen time like our kids do, right? And so, you know, and nobody thinks of you know, things that are just normal on your tablet or on your phone, consuming all your time and hours and hours and hours. And I'm not even talking about pornography. I'm just talking about just stupid stuff, right? You know, Snapchat, TikTok, or whatever, you know, but yet kind of just consuming your mind all the time. And so even when your mind's turned off the screen, it's still on the screen in your mind, right? You know, you're thinking of conversations, you're thinking of things that you're going to be doing while you're on the computer. we're on this. So, but that's not a taboo thing, right? And
Right.
so you can't really come at them as like, okay, well, this is destroying your mind, and because it's not looked at as a taboo, but yet we're reading the science on this, right? We're reading how the biochemistry of the brain is kind of starting to get, with all the serotonin, dopamine releases from all these different social media sites, how you actually are damaging your brain, right? You're setting up a false high.
There's definitely changes that are occurring for sure at some level.
Yeah,
From the activity.
So that's been an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, at some level, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting time to be a parent. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's I guess every generation, right? When when our parents were when we were teenagers.
I'm guessing your parents had the same thoughts about you that you did of.
Well, that's what I keep on telling myself. Like, just kind of, just keep it, stay in your lane, right? And
yeah.
Make sure that
I think the number one thing that we as parents can do, we're always going to worry, but if we can always just be available and be willing to try to keep the conversation going with our kids. And I think as long as we're able to keep the conversation going, and so not to always, it's not about being the cool parent, but it's always about being the accessible parent and the parent to have the conversation and to have the hard conversations when they're necessary, And I think that's kind of where the passivity that you were talking about earlier comes in, because sometimes we need to have that. We need to instigate those conversations ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And that moving here has definitely stepped up my game, and as far as engagement in that area, and so. Whereas if I would have been in California, California had gotten to the point where it was just comfortable. And a lot of people, you're right, a lot of people don't like to move away from comfort, but it was to a point where it was almost just too comfortable. I was just mentally checking in and checking out, and so I had to add some growth, and so otherwise it was just getting a little bit too, it's weird to think of comfort and depressing in the same sentence. But there's a certain element to that where things get so comfortable that nothing's happening as far as being stretched or anything for growth, that you almost just become wasting away, in your.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's so true. We get so stuck in our own little bubble that we just stop growing at all. You can't get outside the bubble.
Yeah, and that's kind of what California was doing. And I find myself missing the state as far as the land goes. I loved living in the Sierra Nevadas and the mountains up there in Tahoe. But there's nothing. Even the coast, in California, is so much superior to the Carolinas.
Oh yeah,
I call it the light beer, right?
Yeah.
The diet soda. Yes, you got mountains and you got coast, but they're not really like the epic.
No.
Photography, from a beautiful standpoint, it's not, you're not dealing on the same par there.
No. So what would your current self say to your young self?
Probably stay away from marijuana. And
it's like completely, it's the new thing now, which is just wild,
Well, okay, so here's the thing that I don't necessarily think of, like I've gone round and round in my conversations with my mom, who used to, she used to be really concerned that I would have a glass of wine, being, the strict Christian that she was. I'm like, Mom, you're popping an Ativan, we're both doing the same thing. Mine is just, not something you have to get a prescription for, right? And so tell me what the difference is, right?
Sure.
And, and so, or Xanax or whatever you want to take, whatever pill of the month that is going around.
You're running away from some sort of pain. You're dulling something.
So the problem I had with marijuana that I didn't really realize at the beginning is how it detaches you, from caring about anything, and so everybody's like, it is escapism, essentially, but it really, I mean, you get to a point where you just don't give a rat's ass about anything, and that was not healthy for relationships, because I let too many people either down or let too many people walk away that I probably would have been wiser to keep along, because I just, I didn't really care if they did or if they didn't, and because I was going to do me, and, either you're going to be a part of that or you weren't going to be part of that. And if you weren't, well, then you do you.
Right.
And yeah, I think I've let a couple people go in my lifetime that had marijuana not been there, probably would have been I would have been better to keep them in my life.
Well, that's a little bit of a regret, though. But
well,
okay.
I mean, like we said, we said, we talked about regrets a little bit, and and now I tell my kids that all the time, because California, it's legal now.
Yeah, legal here in Nevada. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, hey, look, I know it's legal, but keep in mind, this is what I got out of it, and drugs are fun, and if they weren't fun, a lot of people wouldn't do them. So they are fun for a while, but then you kind of start making your choices based around your drugs rather than your relationships.
Well, I think you need to. It's just putting it into some sort of context as you're talking to your kids about them. I mean, this is what people are doing these things to feel better about something. So what are you feeling better about, right?
Yeah, it is, man. Or to not feel anything at all.
Yep.
That's
all right.
thing.
I got one last question for you. I'll let you go. We've been going for a little while here. What's your greatest inspiration?
I like to read a lot, and I like to read about spiritual men that have been broken men, but have overcome, and realize that they weren't perfect, but they learned how to deal with their brokenness and come out on the other end of it. As far as knowing, okay, this is what I recognize. This is what I need to put away or strive to do a little bit, change direction on. And so, inspiration, I would say, comes from authors that have really, a very, very. I would say C.S. Lewis is one. Brennan Manning's one. It's funny coming from an Adventist background. Some of my favorite authors are almost entirely Catholic.
I mean, the Ragamuffin Gospel was literally like that changed my life.
Oh
really.
Yeah. Well, then you and I are on the same path.
Yeah.
See, we don't know that about each other, man. Yeah. But I will second that.
Yeah. I mean, literally, like that was transformational for me. I mean, it literally put the whole gospel into context for me. It literally made God real for me at that point. Because until then, God was just was something that I wasn't a fan of, because it had all these rules and I had to like do all this stuff. And the Ragamuffin pretty much changed that for me.
Yeah, amen, man. I mean, that's he will always be one of my favorite authors for that book alone. And then I've read some other ones with him, but not to the same impact of that. I mean, I would put that one up there, almost close to the Bible as far as a life transformation.
For sure.
Be in the library of greatest books ever. I
mean, if anyone's definitely struggling with their spirit, their walk, or with growing up in a religion or whatever, I mean, whether it's Catholic Church, Baptist, it doesn't matter. That book it literally puts it into perspective. It puts it all into perspective. Yeah,
and in some ways, C.S. Lewis has been that kind of the same. Same sort of inspirational type of things. So I would say my biggest mentors are kind of along those lines, and inspiration guys. I didn't even know C.S. Lewis wrote other books out of Narnia, until later in life, and then I started reading his non-Narnia stuff, and I was like, oh wow, this guy's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the time now when I get to tell you what I think your true biography is, and I think
wow.
it's pretty cool, huh? I do
Wow.
this. I do this
I
all.
get a surprise at the end, huh?
Yeah. So I do this all on the fly, and I think you literally just gave me your biography. Because for me, you're the guy who, against all odds, through his own spiritual fights and everything else has figured it out, and he's figured out how to, raise great kids and have a great career and challenge himself and to do all those things. I need to go back and listen to the recording to write out exactly what he said when I talked about his greatest inspiration. Cause what he said is what I think is his biography. So I think that's who you are, Chris.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'll take it. Beats a heck of a lot of other words have been called.
No, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I think, 7 years, not many people can persevere through 7 years of college, figuring out, and then going from a teacher to a dentist. I mean, that's pretty cool, and then figuring out, and then falling into the career you were made to do. I mean, you are a kid's dentist. That's literally, if my kids were living near you, they would see you. There's no question about that.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's and that's what I think. And that's what I think the number one thing of parents. Let's be honest. As dentists, most patients, aren't really going to know the quality of your work.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to know how they were treated, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to know how you felt about your career.
Right.
And that's what they read. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, I take it on myself to be a very proficient dentist as well, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not my big sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they, like I said, they don't really care, especially on baby teeth. I mean,
Right.
if that that interproximal box isn't perfect, but I still, for my own artistic
Right.
point, I love to make it perfect. But
Right.
but they see how you treat their kids, and they see
Mm-hmm.
how you are excited. Are you a burnout, or do you really find life in your job? And I've been very fortunate to have picked a career to be able to do both of those.
Yeah, and you've been willing to challenge yourself to that when you felt some burnout coming, that you decided to change it and actually go do something else. And I think that is something that's not done enough as well. It's like what one of my earlier podcast guests said, was that one thing that's cool about dentistry is that we actually can change how we work. So we can actually have, in the same profession, actually go and do a different job if we want to. We can decide to focus on something else, or move to a different place, and still do our same career, but just, do it a little bit differently. And you're doing it a little bit differently now because you're having to, which is good.
Yeah, you have to. And then, the travel aspect now, I can kind of explore the East Coast, which is, I'm not there to say that I think the West Coast is still the best coast, but there's enough places on the East Coast here to kind of at least get out.
And you don't have to be there forever either, if you don't want to.
Yeah, no, I give myself I'll get Ian through high school and Zoe through college, and then we'll see. He may go to Washington State, and that might be my call in to say, okay, we did it, we had fun, and now we're coming back. We don't know. I don't know how the ball will roll.
That's good though. But hey, I mean, I'm just impressed that you just decided to up and move. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, you've definitely it's a growth bubble that will benefit you down the road.
It is, yeah, and it's something to be said to work for, an organization that's a good faith-based organization too. I mean, I'd never speak poorly against my employment where I was at, because he was a super good guy, but he tended to treat the practice as a business and business only, really, and this is a little bit more, okay, we're actually making a difference in communities. We're actually going out and, we're doing mission stuff and all that kind of stuff. So it's been fun that way too.
That's cool. That's awesome. It's not like you found like the perfect fit.
Yeah, so far, no regrets on the move. I'll miss it sometimes in California, but like you said, you can always move back.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I thank you for your time, and I appreciated the chat. It was fun catching up and getting to know more about you. So I didn't even know. I mean, I didn't know your dad was a dentist. Figure that out. I mean, we have a lot of similarities there. The fact that we're both sons of dentists, and we're dentists ourselves.
Yeah, pretty well.
Cool. Yeah. All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite, man.
For sure. Yep. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy.
Hey,